Hey there, friends, students, lurkers, curious individuals. I'm going to call this a spooky ball episode. I think of Tesla when I do this. I think of electricity in general. I'm fascinated by it. I love the metaphors that go with it. Voltage, pressure. Somewhere in Synergetics dictionary, Bucky Fuller defines teleology in terms of voltage pressure, with which I can relate to. We sometimes feel compelled, right, to do the next thing, whatever that is. There's a pressure to perform, right? Go out on stage, do whatever, right? We feel it. We feel a pressure to perform. Now, we can't say planets feel that. We look out in the physical world, and where's the pressure? It's all somewhat principle of least action, kind of almost a tautology given the physical laws, is how it seems. And yet we feel these pressures. I'm just going to leave it at that for the moment. What I want to do in this particular video is dive a little bit deeper into a couple Martian Math slides in the storyboard, but on my way there, since I was just talking about Waterman Polyhedra, I've come to Wikipedia to see what's there. And I've done a video on the Watermans too, YouTube more generally, but he started out by sending his stuff to the Fuller Institute, and they were actually physically made of little beads glued together. Maybe they were BBs, I forget. And BFI forwarded a box of his materials to myself in Portland, and I got in touch with Steve, and since I was into rendering, doing 3D rendering using POV ray, and studying synergetics, I was into the CCP or the IVM. Anyway, the stars aligned such that I was able to help him get some early renderings. And now looking back, where I said it got more complicated, like where do you situate the origin of one of these convex hulls? And in my day, when I first started collaborating with Waterman, very early days of his trajectory, it was origin 1, which is at the center of one of these CCP spheres. Start with the sphere at the center, and then you get a sequence going down the first column, so vertically. And I've got some of these renderings similar to this at my website. It really helped to have an open source software program called QHull. Like, I don't have the math skills on my own to just throw a smattering of points into the database and then figure out which is the convex hull there, what's the optimal set of vertices. Like, anyway, my algorithms were somewhat crude. I am not a super genius, right? So I just hack away. So I wanted to stop there for a brief recap, and then also show you the last two videos that I just did, how they end up in my blog. So Grain of Sand, OCN again, that's Oregon Curriculum Network, July 31st. I think I'm missing a watch party. Tulsi Gabbard was going to be in a debate tonight, and I debated about going, but it was in Vancouver, Washington, and I'm making videos here. But anyway, I'm not following what's going on in the world. I'm paying attention, but I'm also creating this blog post which has the last two videos embedded, which are about Martian Math, and so is this. And let me get to that slide. So what we talk about in this storyboard, Martian Math, is, right, the Martians are here, they've landed on Earth, and they want to collaborate with us, and we've chosen to build a hydroelectric power plant together. So all the electricity stuff that you need to know to understand about electromagnetic generation of hydropower and AC, DC, all that, I would defer to others, but we've got the hydroelectric plant there, so it's in the storyboard, all ready to be used to teach all you need to teach about grids and all that stuff. But when we bring Earthlings to work with the Martians, who are fixated on the tetrahedron to such an extent, we have to help them understand each other, and it helps the Martians to understand our three-dimensional idea when they think of a tetrahedron and the two complementary zigzags that would define, 3 dimensions, what we call 3 dimensions or volume. Right? 3 points determine a plane, which is 2D, and then 1 point not in that plane creates 3D. That's how we talk in normal XYZ talk. And we put our X, Y, and Z number lines mutually perpendicular. Now the Martians don't see it quite that way to begin with, but they understand that we could start with a tetrahedron and pick either of two complementary zigzags and say those are number lines, and then have them start growing, expanding in both directions, right? So 0 would be like the mid-edge of each edge of a zigzag, and of course the complementary zigzag is always there too. And that's the thing, when we say 3 dimensions, we're kind of talking about where they see 3 edges of a tetrahedron. They're not mutually perpendicular, but it's not that it matters that much in their way of thinking that they're not. Because they don't see our 1D or 2D as actual experiences. They see everything starting with space a priori, and so it's a tetrahedron for them. This is where we're getting back to, of course, synergetics. So, now, do you need to go into this slide, and is it important that you do quad rays and that you follow all these kinds of things to the letter, or what? What's your commitment? Well, that's the thing. It's all open source, and it's there for you to mix and match and figure out, what do you want to get into. But what I'm suggesting is this is very much part of American literature, heritage, and history. So to devote time to this is to reclaim being a public school in a way, like loyal to the agenda around here, however branded, right? So 4D was a brand. I use that too, but I'm not saying what branding you have to use, but don't let anyone say this doesn't belong in an American school, because for sure it does, right? Because Fuller is like a paradigm, Bear Island, Massachusetts, New England transcendentalism, right? I mean, he's got it even in his family tree. He's got Margaret Fuller, and he didn't just ignore that, right? So just saying, this is all very viable as public school stuff, however much time you want to put into it. And I'm saying you can do this in literature. You don't have to wait for math teachers to decide this is interesting. It's interesting because it's part of the Pound era, right? You want people to understand what the writers have been doing, and here's what they've been doing. Some of them, not all of them, but Hugh Kenner was involved in this. It's a big roster, actually. So Fuller and company. I just, I'm not going to recite thousands of names now, but that goes here. That list goes here. All right. That sounds good. Talk to you soon.